Yeah, I want to thank both of you for being here today. And certainly when Congress just doesn't do a reauthorization when it comes up, we just do these continuing resolutions over and over, we forget to pay attention. We forget that when all else fails, read the directions is always good advice. We don't go back and read our own directions, see how a program was designed and how it's being applied now, and whether something was lost in translation. And I'm of the opinion that maybe some of those things are at play here. So I want to explore that a little bit in my questions to you. Mr. Olivet, among the tools for action on USICH's website, there's a Housing First checklist that's intended to help make a basic assessment of whether and to what degree a particular housing program is employing a Housing First approach. So if a tenant is unable to abide by the terms of a tenancy, every effort is made, according to the website, to move them to another housing situation program or project. Would you agree that these are principles of Housing First?
Thank you, Ranking Member, for raising the issue of Housing First. And sometimes what we see is a discrepancy between the directions, as you so rightly said, and how things play out in the real world. We know that Housing First does not mean housing only. And I was a case manager in this field before we had Housing First. And what we were doing was not working very well, making people jump through a lot of hoops before they got into housing. And so we would see people languishing in shelters and in vehicles and on the street with serious mental health issues, untreated substance use issues. And what I hear from people over and over is that it's incredibly hard to get sober and stay sober if I'm outside. It's very hard to address my mental health if I don't have a stable home to go to. So the whole principle of Housing First was get people into that stable foundation as quickly as possible and provide really good wraparound supports to help them succeed. And that works very well for many people, but not everyone, as you said.
And so my question is, and my concern is that maybe some of those wraparound services aren't actually happening. That instead of saying, okay, we're going to give them services, and when they're ready, we'll put them in a house. Now we're saying we'll provide housing, but then not requiring these wraparound services that give them the help, knowledge, and information and support they need to stay in that house.
I think what we've seen is that when those services are readily available to people, many, many people choose them. And as you said, it doesn't work for everyone. I think the success rates in Housing First are something like 90%. It's an extraordinary success rate. Good. But that also means that 1 out of 10 folks aren't being served well and may return to homelessness. We need to do a better job supporting them.
Should they be required to access those services as opposed to leaving it voluntary?
I think voluntary treatment is the thing that works best. I think when people are forced to do treatment of some kind, it's not always as successful, and people don't always do as well in that treatment.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Olivet. And Dr. Chow, thank you for your 20 years of service in housing programs. That's a commitment, and we appreciate your years of expertise. So in rural areas, as I mentioned, some people just cram themselves into housing. It happens a lot on Indian reservations. As opposed to being homeless, there are many families under one roof. So how do we account, and this has got to be hard, but how do we account for those people? They're underhoused.
Thank you, Senator, for that question. We recognize that in rural communities and in tribal communities in particular, homelessness looks different. And our definition of homelessness does include people who are living in substandard conditions, who are living in places not meant for human habitation. And I've been to tribal nations where I've seen some of the conditions that people are living in severely overcrowded. And so that is part of the definition. And we've been working to increase more resources going to rural communities as well as to tribal communities. And with additional flexibilities, resources that we provide to tribal communities allows them to adapt the programs to the needs of their tribal communities. And for the rural resources that we've been providing, we took advantage of the fix that actually Congress made so that you can use some of our homeless assistance grants to make home repairs and other home modifications that are often needed to just make housing livable in those rural communities.
And my time has expired again. Thank you both.
Thank you very much. Senator Menendez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to you and the ranking member for hosting, I think, what's a very important